Play to Learn Preschool. Happy Monday, happy Halloween. I hope you survived the morning with your preschoolers. We had ours dress up in costumes. Betsy dressed up as a bat this year, and they actually had a really good morning, so no concerns at all. Tomorrow's another question though. After they've been up late tonight and trick-or-treating, don't you wonder what's gonna happen tomorrow? I'm sure it'll be okay. I am here this afternoon. I wanted to share some ideas with you for helping to reach reluctant learners. So you know what I mean by reluctant learners are those kids who see a more academic center, something with letters or numbers or writing or something a little bit more cognitive, it's not just blocks or not the sand table or something like that. Something that requires a little bit more academic skills, and they just run right by, or they just take a look at the center and keep on walking. And there are always some of those students every year in every class, no matter where you teach. And it's easy to get frustrated and say, why won't those kids do the math center? Or I can never get those kids to sit down and do the alphabet center. Or I don't know what's going on. They'll never practice their writing. And rather than get frustrated, I always try to ask myself, what can I do to make that center more enticing? What can I do to make it irresistible so that no matter the student, no matter the activity, they're going to want to sit there and participate. They're going to want to join in and do the activity. I've mentioned in a lot of the other videos that during our center time, the students are actually free to move about to the different centers at their own pace. We don't time them. They're free to stay there as long or as short as they'd wish. We don't require that they go to a certain number of centers or require that they visit every center. We feel that we can meet all of their needs in whichever centers they choose and whichever things we have set up. We also don't limit the number of students at the center. We try to make the space really conducive to, if it's a 2-person center, the space has room for 2 people. If it's the big sensory table, there's space for 8 people around it. And we really try to ask the students when there are a lot of kids crowded around one area, what are you going to do to solve this problem? It looks like you're really squished. So those are the ways that we run our centers. But today what I really want to focus on is how to reach reluctant students. Reluctant learners I use as just a term to mean the kids who glance at the ABC Center and keep on walking straight to the blocks, or the kids who kind of do a drive-by at the math center, and you can never really get them to sit down and engage. And so I have a few suggestions for things that work for me. And the suggestion primarily is make it something that they want to touch, they want to do. And the way that I like to do that is by incorporating a sensory experience into the center. So I'm going to give you 5 examples of how I do it, and I would love to hear from you. Is this something that you've tried in your classroom or that works for you? So I know that we've shared our centers around the room, and I've showed you my sensory table. It's a big table, and we filled it in September with rice. This October it's had pumpkin seeds in it. In November we're doing a transportation theme during the month of November, and it will have kinetic sand, and we're going to be doing some different transportation add-ins and accessories in the kinetic sand. But that's not the only place where my students, hey Christy, thanks for all the suggestions about Los Angeles. We're gonna figure that out. I appreciate all of your suggestions. Hopefully I'll catch you on Friday. What I was saying though is that's not the only place where my students are engaged in sensory play. I use sensory play around the classroom to really make my centers enticing. Not a great big table full of 20 pounds of rice, but like I'm going to show you, I can use it in smaller ways. So here are a few examples. Some of them I'm going to be able to hold up, and then the others I think I'm going to have to tilt the camera down so you can see the table in front of me. So let me show you the ones that we can hold up. So I have these really fantastic alphabet puzzles from Melissa and Doug. They're wood, which I love wood toys because they hold up really well to a lot of play and wear and tear over the years. And these wooden puzzles come with these nice little wooden alphabet pieces. And for a lot of my students, I could set this puzzle out with a basket of alphabet pieces, and they, not a lot, half. they would sit and put the pieces together, you know, to do the puzzle. Like, oh, okay, that's fine, and then they'd move on. But I have a handful of students, about half of them, who would like look at this center and be like, nah, keep walking, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to look for my letters. And so the way that I spice it up and try to reach my reluctant learners is I put the pieces in a box. See, I'm gonna have to tip the camera down a little bit, of alphabet noodles. So these are alphabet pasta. They sell them at my grocery store. They're actually the store brand. They're teeny tiny. I think you can get a macaroni and cheese brand that's a little bit, the alphabet letters are bigger, but I like this little bitty one. And so then what they do is they're playing in the alphabet noodles trying to find the letters for the word fish. So they're digging around in the, you know, in alphabet students, or in the alphabet thing. And if you can see, it's just one of these little shoebox size Rubbermaid tubs. It's not a huge, like 20 pounds worth of ABC noodles, but this little individual tub is a really nice way. I'll just put this out with the kids, and then I can pick the letters that go to 2 puzzles, you know, which is 4, 1 on each side, and they'll sit and just try to find the letters for their puzzles. It's not too overwhelming, and the kids who really crave sensory play and want to touch everything and have their hands in everything, they love this, and I'm sneaking in the alphabet practice as well. So here's another example. I'm gonna have to tip the camera down for this one. So I have these number counting mats, and I do them for different seasons. And what I like to do is print 2 of them for each state, like for each student or for each seat. So this one I've got the numbers 2 and the number 6. I'm gonna tip the camera now, let's see if this will work. And instead of just giving them a basket with the manipulatives that go with it, I like to put it in a tray with some sensory materials. So these are dried split peas and lentils. So I just mix it in there. And then what the students do is they're supposed to count, you know, 6 pumpkins. So they're digging around for their pumpkins to make 6. And then I have pictures of each number, and so they have to count the number and decide if this belongs on the 6 mat or on the 2 mat. So rather than just putting all of these pieces, you know, in a little basket or just laying them out on the table, I bury them in this sensory tray, and then the students who don't necessarily they're not necessarily drawn right to the math center, they will go to this because they want to touch the split peas and the lentils, you know. And so even if they're just playing there for a few minutes, it gives me time to come up to them at centers and say, oh, I noticed you really like the split peas. I like the way they feel too. I wonder if we could find a number that shows 6 and put it on the mat. And because their hands are engaged and they're busy, you know, and they're kind of being soothed by the sensory play, a lot of times I can engage them in the math activity as well. So here's another example. These are black beans, and I have these pieces of bugs. I think I got them at Learning Resources, but they're like subitizing bugs, you know, so there's a 3 and a 2, and they put them together, and then they have to try to find the 5 head, you know. So I could just lay these bugs out for them to try to put them together, but it's not that attractive. A lot of kids would just walk right by it. So instead I like to bury the bugs in one of these. It's like a real shallow tray. It was at the Target. I got these trays at the Target dollar spot in the summer. But I just put, you know, a bag of beans, and I pile all of the pieces in here, and it's just a nice way for them to really be kind of enticed or attracted to come to this center because they want to touch the beans. So I've had a couple of questions. Do I have a tray for every child? For this center, I usually just have like room for 2 kids because I don't make trays for everybody. Sometimes I can make enough for 3, you know, and 2 kids can work together, but it's one of my smaller tabletop centers, so there might just be two options for it. And then somebody else was asking if they ever throw the sensory materials, and the answer is yes, of course they do. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that they never do. So I would say 2 things. First, give them an opportunity to play with the sensory material without the learning activity in it. So if it's been at your sensory table, or they have like a small opportunity just to play with the materials, that's the first step. So they've already had an opportunity just to touch it and explore and see what whatever the sensory material is. And then the second tip that I have is don't put more in the tub than you're willing to clean up off the floor. True story. So I don't put more in there. You know, if I kind of think to myself, if this whole thing got dumped on the floor, how bad would it be? Not that bad, because it's like a pound of black beans, right? So just be realistic. I do talk to them about keeping it in the trays, and they're pretty good about when something is set up at the tabletop center and not dumping or taking it to another center. And that's just because we've modeled it and rehearsed it and talked about it and role played it and had some experiences where the kids thrown it on the floor and they know how long it takes to clean up. So it's just a learning experience. Let me give you 2 more examples of how I might do this. Writing is a really tough one, isn't it? There are a lot of kids who love to sit and color and sit and write, and then there are an equal number of kids who would be happy to never practice writing their letters or practice holding a pencil or coloring. That's just not their thing. Maybe their fine motor skills are not quite developed, or it's really hard for them. And so I always try to think of sensory ways that we can incorporate writing too. So I'm going to tip the camera down because this one's hard to hold up and show you a way that we have our students practice their letters using sensory play. So let's see if this will work. All right, see that? Okay, so this is a sensory tray. It's just the same tray that I use all the time from Hobby Lobby, and it's got some play sand in it, some colored blue sand, and these are just pieces of card. Now the letters are going to be backwards because I'm on that selfie cam, but some pieces of like cardboard, and I put a letter sticker on them. And so what they do at this center is they choose one of the letters, and then they can, it's going to be backwards for you too, isn't it? Then they can draw the letter in the sand, and as an additional sensory experience, I put a little basket of beads. You could use plastic beads or glass beads or, you know, whatever kind of small manipulatives you have, and then they can kind of like write the letter with these with this sensory experience. So I don't really have kids throw these, and I only use them with my pre-K students, which are my 4s turning 5s. So I don't worry too much about them putting them in their mouths because they're not mouthing anything anymore. But it's just another sensory way for them to practice making the letters. So anytime you can incorporate sensory, sorry about the camera, I think that's the only way I can do it because I'm by myself. Anytime you can incorporate sensory play into writing, that will entice those kids who are maybe a little bit more reluctant. And then the last one is just another idea. So this is a rhyming center. I think it's actually from my transportation unit. And I have these magnetic stoplights. I just ran them through the magnetic paper on the Xyron. And what they have to do is try to find 3 words that rhyme on in them. And so you could just put, you know, like all these circles out on a magnet board or something, but it's a lot. And so what I like to do is give a tray with 2 stoplights to the children, and I pick out the 6 pieces that go with these and put it in a small sensory bin. So this is just one of those little, it says marbles, but it's not, it's popcorn. This is just one of those small Rubbermaid shoe boxes, and I've buried in there all of the pieces that go to these 2 stoplights. And so then what they have to do is just dig through. This is a coat, so it sticks up here as a magnet, and then you know, they're digging through this this sensory table. Here's a goat. Coat rhymes with goat, and they're just looking for the pieces that go together. Well, it's supposed to be magnetic. Goat, boat, coat. And then they're gonna, you know, dig through and try to find the pieces. Car, star, jar. But rather than just put the pieces out, which isn't really that exciting, I put them in this little sensory bin for each child. And these are popcorn kernels. It's not a ton of popcorn kernels, like maybe a cup of popcorn kernels. And it's just a way to get to those kids who would see that center and to be like, that's nothing special, you know? But if you give them something to touch and something to kind of excite their senses, then they are going to be more likely to participate in the center. So that's one of the ways when I'm trying to plan out my centers and I think, are they gonna wanna do this? Or, how can I make sure that the kids really want to try it and I can engage their, their minds and their senses all at the same time? Could I put into a little bitty sensory tub? And so, that's one of the ways when we're planning our centers that we try to make them really enticing and we try to reach those reluctant learners. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have other ideas for using sensory play in some more academic areas. And Gemma and I will be on tomorrow, but just for a few minutes, right at like 1:30 Eastern. We're going to do something kind of special, I think, when we're in at the NACE conference in California. So we're going to share that with you. And then people have asked if we're going to go live from the conference. And the answer is yes, we're going to try to go live from the conference. The problem, of course, is the Wi-Fi signal in a conference center is not always fantastic. So if I can get a good signal there when we're at NACE, we'll definitely go live. I would love to show you the exhibition hall where they display all the new toys and all the up and coming learning, furniture. It's the coolest thing. So hopefully I can go live for you, but it will just really depend when we get there if we have a good signal or not. So we'll be back tomorrow for a quick, just a quick hello before we head off to California. Thank you guys for watching. Have fun playing and learning with your kids today. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.